Yes, Ops Experts Club. Taryn, I changed my mic so I could do it. Could you hear it? Did you get it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. That's what I'm talking about, Taryn. It's because it's all about sound effects. I kicked back off. I don't know if you know this or not, but Mission Impossible's got a new one coming out. And so I made Megan start watching with me. Like I backed us all the way up to like 1996, like the first one, which was rough. So if any of you listeners are thinking about Tom Cruise and watching some movies, number 1 and 2, rough. But starting at number 3, man, like J.J. Abrams got involved. And like it's all about sound effects and it's all about getting in there and it's all about the build. So I'm hoping that my intro to the show really adds to the show. What do you think?
I think so. Yeah. I think it's the best part of my day.
Well, that makes me happy because you're the best part of my day, especially when you wear that hat. So thanks for joining us. Ops Experts, great to have you join us today on the show. I'm really excited about the dude that we're going to be interviewing today. We get a lot of different people that come from a lot of different places. One of the great things about the Collab team is just our ability to work with folks that are in all different kind of verticals, because ops is pretty much ops, regardless of the vertical that you're in the middle of. But I'm also really deeply invested in and spending time with Pete Vargas and his mastermind called Wellspring. And this gentleman that I'm going to bring to the stage today is part of my pod within Pete's mastermind, but is just such a good-hearted dude. And I've seen him really just climbing the ladder, like just making more and more progress and even making some big moves geographically to get closer to places he wants to be. And I've just been really impressed with him. So with no further ado, I'm going to bring to the stage Brett Swartz from Capital Gains Tax Solution. Brett, here we go.
Aaron, loving your energy. Taryn, what's going on? Good to see you both today. Let's rock and roll. I think we got like 21 minutes, so let's do this.
21 minutes, let's do it. So Brett, you wrote a book, Building Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan, I believe is what it's called. Maybe just give us a little bit of a breakdown of kind of your ascension to writing a book, to coming out with this new concept, some of the things that the book addresses.
Yeah. The pain of the 2008 crash taught us a lot of what not to do when it comes to building a business or real estate, massive $1 million exits, and then not exiting in time and then getting crushed by the market. Or if had you exit, you might have used something that was not favorable for your capital gains tax that puts you in another compromised position like a 1031 exchange. And so we learned the hard way of what not to do after the 2008 crash. And honestly, I was on my back financially, personally myself, starting my own kind of life, if you will, with my wife and our own household. And I was newly married, baby on the way. Market fell apart, and I went from making nothing to like even nothing, even negative overnight. I actually ended by borrow $5,000.
Negative nothing.
Overnight, baby. And then had an opportunity to do a side hustle at a place called Cheesecake Factory, and side hustles at basketball tournaments. And so probably like every entrepreneur who's listening to this, you probably had that story of the bottom of the barrel. That's where I was in 2009 financially, but we were thriving as we were building out our family. My wife and I, keeping her home full time was the focus at the time, and still is. We've had 5 kids at this point. But during this time period, we learned about something that is transformational for families and business owners when they exit highly appreciated businesses or real estate, Bitcoin, stock, anything, where you can defer the tax and get time on your side, get debt out of the way, and ultimately multiply freedom and impact. And so this is what we do here at Capital Gains Tax Solutions. We unlock capital gains to multiply freedom and impact for the purpose-driven entrepreneur and investor who has a massive, huge gain and doesn't want to suffer the consequences of the funds going to a government that's not a great steward with the capital. Instead, they want to keep it with their family, invest in their next business, diversify, whatever it is that's going to suit their next chapter of life.
I love it. That's a mouthful. How about that, Jerry? I mean, we come out of the gates punching today for Ops Experts Club. So I know, Brett, you started just at like normal real estate like anybody else, right? And then you kind of escalated up into like, maybe tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you're at, and then maybe how you stumbled your way into DST.
Yeah. So I started out building houses with my parents in the Bay Area. So that's when I was really young. And then I went to college and I played basketball and stuff, and I wanted to do something competitive. So I got introduced to something called commercial real estate brokerage, which is kind of like a Navy SEALs of selling real estate. So I sold multifamily properties, and I'm a real estate broker by trade. So that's where I started out. And again, that's when the 2008 crash hit. And that's when we said, there's got to be a better way for folks to exit and to reinvest on their own terms. And that's when we learned about a strategy that's a trust with a business trust with an installment sale. We can exit businesses, real estate, but really just spending time with a genius, a guy that is a process guy, a guy that's an analytical guy, a guy that's a CPA and a tax attorney who created this thing about 28 years ago. he's really the genius. And I'm just the guy that helps people to get a legal structure ready and in place to execute when they exit. So they have an extra 20 to 50% more and proceeds to be able to work with for their next chapter. So that's really the origin story of the struggle, of the pain and the problem, of the, meeting the guide, right? And along the way, having a lot of people that supported me to learn the business of capital gains tax exit planning. And most people just don't focus on that. They have a CPA that does their, business tax returns or their personal tax returns and some, IRAs, 401k, some of the general stuff. Maybe people know about 1031 exchanges, but they don't know how to exit massive, 5, 10, 20, $100 million exits and defer the tax in a favorable way that's flexible. And that's really what we just fall in love with what it can do for families and what it can do for communities and what it can do for people who want to, multiply their freedom and impact.
I love that. So do you feel like, what are some beginning steps? What should people be thinking about? Obviously, you've talked about exits. You've talked about things where people are actually get to the point of selling. But I know that for us here on Ops Experts, a lot of times we're talking about how do you frame it up to make it something that's worthwhile for yourself today, but then also in future, as you continue to scale, you're talking about scaling all the way up to the point where you're actually exiting this thing. What would be your advice of people that are coming in, they're hearing about this for the first time, they love the idea of deferred tax, being able to use that money in order to multiply right now while time's on your side? All those things sound exciting, but I feel like there's some early steps that people have to get into place before they even hit you. What are your thoughts on that?
I'll tell a story and then I'll build it around that and that framework around that. And so we have a client, we just helped them exit an $8 million business that they had scaled from $100,000 of revenue to like multiple millions in revenue. And they exited about 66% of the business. It was an automotive shop in Massachusetts. And this couple is in their mid 30s, young kids. And they have zero basis in, multiple millions in tax if they do not set up a plan. And so we found them with about, 60 days to go from their sale. And think about that. They just spent the last 6 or so years building this business, blood, sweat, and tears, pouring everything into it. And they're about to give away somewhere between 30 and 35% of the proceeds. And they spent 5 hours with me and we built a plan where they could land the proceeds in a tax efficient way. And so now that's number one. Number two, what were they really trying to unlock? Or they're trying to unlock what's called truly passive income. And what we found over the years of doing so many of these with so many clients, that most business owners, real estate owners, at some point, they want to unlock what's called truly passive income. And so I'm talking about no shoes, no shirt, no problem. You're Kenny Chesney, Aaron. You're playing on the guitar. You have your glasses, your hat on, and you're on the beach. And you have this durable, it's consistent cash flow just flowing in. Okay. To think about it, you're not really worried about it. You just have it going. And so we have a saying around here that truly passive income is to your freedom and impact as compounding interest is to your money. Okay. And in fact, it's what most entrepreneurs are already chasing from the beginning. They want financial freedom. They invest into real estate, they invest into business, they build it. They want to have the control of their own destiny. They want this flexibility of their time and their margin, right? But sometimes we get so caught in just building the business that when we exit, we can unlock that big piece. Doesn't mean you can't still be an entrepreneur and go build the thing, because guess what? They're still going to build the thing. They're in their mid-30s. They're going to build it, right? But they've unlocked this massive amount of principle, right? They've harvested that principle, but they've invested in such a way that they could, if they wanted to, if something happened, they could just be Kenny Chesney sitting on the beach, no shoes, no shirt, no problem, having this durable, cash flow. So I think one of the big exercises for our entrepreneurs that are listening, our operations folks that are working with the entrepreneur, or whoever you might be out there, is figuring out what is your truly passive income number. Is it 10,000 a month, 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever it is? What is that number? And if you could unlock that in a no shoes, no shirt, no problem, no passive time, passive energy, you don't have to do anything for it. The money's just working for you. And then the money's showing up. What could that do for your family, for freedom and impact? How much more could you show up, right? Knowing that you don't have to trade any more time for dollars if you don't want to, right? How much more could you invest into your company, into the people, right? Because you have all of this, your company can now be, I've got truly passive income coming in. My whole company could be for just, ministry and giving and blessing other people, right? And so it's a different mindset and a focus. And most folks, I think when they're exiting, they get so caught up in selling the business for 10 million, 20, 30, 40, $100 million. They don't think strategically enough to plan not only extra proceeds with the capital gains tax, but also the stewardship of the capital for their family, for their community, right? For what they want to do next. And so that's really the focus that we really help people with.
I love that. That's really cool. Do you remember the time when you stumbled upon this and you didn't just realize it was a solution for you, but it's really a solution that you have to share? And kind of
Yeah, I think
from your story to other stories.
Yeah, I think it had to do with Steve, the gentleman named Steve. He was a potential client of mine, and I met Steve in the early 2007. And Steve was married, 2 young boys, and he had $50 million of real estate. He had a real estate multifamily kind of like business, right? Good sized business, all these different properties, management company, construction, all this stuff going on. And we said, Steve, we think you should probably sell because the market's kind of high right now, and maybe you should do something else. He goes, well, but guys, I can't. I have the 1031 exchange, which everything is overpriced. I have too much debt. I don't even know if I can qualify for more debt at this point. And if I don't qualify, if I don't do a perfect 1031, I lose because all my tax I have to pay. And so at the time, we didn't have the solution for him. And so he said, you're kind of right, Steve. We don't blame you. Well, fast forward, Steve goes to loses all of his properties. He loses all $50 million worth of his real estate. Not only that, he loses his primary house. He goes bankrupt. He loses his marriage. And the worst part about it was, he didn't get to spend time with his kids, right? And I had a flashback because you see, my parents were divorced at a young age. My parents also built up a bunch of real estate. My parents also had a lot going for them. And then the divorce happened, and let's just say my dad didn't pay child support, and we used to be talking to my mom, and we didn't really have any money. And I remember thinking, like, wow, how devastating can wealth be for families when the pride of life and a lot of things that just take over with the consumption. My dad had the Harleys, the boats, he'd take us camping. And Dad did a lot of really good things. Loved my dad. But at the same time, he did some things that weren't right. And I look back and I go, So I couldn't help but thinking that Steve is now going through the same thing. He's going to lose out on his 2 sons. My brother and I had a brother, right? Yeah, I have a brother. He's 2 years older than me. He's going to be the director of my operations for my team. And, we didn't get to spend time with my dad the way that we wanted to. And vice versa. When my dad's house, we couldn't spend time with my mom's. So that was the moment I was just like, man, there's just got to be a better way for someone who pours so much into their craft or their business or real estate investing, just for it to be crushed or feel like he couldn't have an option. Had we had the option for him, so this is the moment, Taryn, we would have said, do a deferred sales trust. You could have get out of all your debt. You can diversify all your wealth. You don't have to do a 1031 exchange. You can sit tax deferred and basically Charles Schwab and invest in whatever you want, whenever you want. Basically, it's the Netflix version to the old 1031 exchange blockbuster. And so had we had that, it would have literally transformed his life, maybe saved his marriage. Like, I can't say that finances was the only thing. That financial, struggles are the number, top 2 reasons why people get divorced, right? Money problems and money fights. So who knows if that could have been this. That was really the moment that it really changed forever. So this is a calling for me, and I'm going to do everything I can to get the word out for as many families as I can, so that they can make a difference. In fact, there's $84 to $100 trillion is transferring, guys, over the next 15 years. This is known as the largest wealth transfer in the history of the planet. And so every single day, there's about 10,000 baby boomers in the U.S. turning 65. There's 80 million in the U.S. alone. And 50% of all the wealth in America is tied to high-end primary homes, private equity, and commercial real estate. So those are 50% of all wealth in America, which most of it's owned by baby boomers. And so we're going to see the largest wealth transfer in the history of the planet taking place. So just think of the sheer numbers of that. It's this massive tsunami of wealth that's happening in the next 15 years. And it's going to go one of 2 places. Number one, it's going to be squandered by, or at least mismanaged or not stewarded well, likely by the government, which we're seeing really rapid pace right now of how bad it really is. Or it can be in the hands of the people, right? To create jobs, the hand of the entrepreneur to create jobs, the hands of the real estate entrepreneur to create attainable workforce housing, right? To end the housing crisis. Right? So like, we have such a window here, right? And so those are the 2 moments, Taryn, once I understood the numbers and the sheer size of it and the emotional connection with Steve and his family after the crushing divorce.
That's great. That's inspiring and moving. And man, you obviously have got it down. Like, you have got the pitch down, bro. Me and Taryn are signing up today. So tell me about your book. Like, what led you to write a book?
Yeah, building a capital gains tax exit plan. You can find it on Amazon. We got an Amazon bestseller list, which is cool. One of the things that was really inspiring was when I made a book, you say, get into rooms with people that are really, really smart, right? And try not to be the smartest person in the room, in the wrong room. I got in a book with some really smart people, like Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank, like Don Winter from DLP, like Tony Robbins, CPA, Tyler McBroom. I got a room. I got a book with them, and we wrote chapters kind of together where I interview them. So and then I also wrote my own chapters. But it's my story on basically the journey to what I've been talking about here for the last few minutes, which is called the Deferred Sales Trust, which gives you the ability to build a capital gains tax exit plan that multiplies your freedom and impact, eliminate the need for the 1031 exchange, and also about growing businesses and making an impact, right? And his story of mentorship for Kevin, he talks about mentoring to millions and how he grew up and how he learned the business from his dad, and Don, and how Don's built an elite organization, and there's about 7 or 8 others as well that are telling their story on multifamily and mobile home parks. So it is actually like an entrepreneur real estate investing book is what I would call it. But the core message is on this unique strategy for exiting, and how to not only build an exit plan to defer that capital gains tax, but also to build a dream team to help you execute on that strategy. Like, these are some ideas of some folks that you can invest with. And that's really probably our real superpower is real estate investing. We learned about a capital gains tax exit plan, and then our real superpower is building teams to execute for like a family office type of approach for these exits. And so most folks don't know what that necessarily may be. And so we educate and we build the team and we execute. So the book is kind of like an encompassing of those three things.
Sounds amazing. Yeah, I love it. Find it on Amazon. I love Brett, your heart. I think the thing I've been most impressed about with you, Brett, getting to know you just this past year, is just you and your wife, Melanie, and your fervent desire to head towards goals. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like you're really goal-oriented people. You and your wife, I feel like, do some really impressive things, goals around your health, goals about living on mission, goals obviously about growing your wealth, growing your business. Maybe can you talk to us a little bit about setting goals, and then how people could be thinking about that, even in regards to whether it's applying towards what you're talking about? Because there's some people out there that might not be part of that wealth tsunami that's necessarily right now part of what they're in, but they can be contributing toward getting to that spot by the time that wave's breaking. So maybe you could talk to us a little about goal formation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with a clear vision on the calling on your life. And so before you go to individual goals, for me as a believer, in Jesus Christ, as a Christian, I'm asking him, like, what is the unique calling on my life, and what is the unique work that you've given me to do for this season of my life, and getting crystal clear on that before going anywhere else. And on top of that, then you say, what's our family mission, vision, values? What's the core of what we want to be remembered for? Like, what kind of legacy do we want to have as a family? What kind of values do we want to pass on to our kids? We have 5 kids, my wife and I. The rest of the stories, I was able to retire from the Cheesecake Factory, right? And I actually did some medical sales in between all of the chaos of the 2008 crash. And my wife was able to stay home full time with our kids, which is a core value for us. And we've had 5 kids, ages 14 to 6 in between there. And so we had to get really clear on our mission, vision, values for our family. What are the non-negotiables? And then start to center around individual goals or family goals. And so one of the goals we adopted from Don Winter, which is having 1,000 extraordinary days in 100 unique locations with our kids before they're 18. Like, this is a big goal of ours. And so we're intentionally planning these things, and we're doing that. And then on top of that, we personally, major areas of the life, the faith, family, fitness, finances, fun, fulfillment, friends, kind of the major things. And then asking the Lord, like, hey, where do you want me to be here in the next 6 to 12 months? And then what are some intentional habits that we can put into place that can make us, actually attainable, right? And then I think the one that it's helped me quite a bit is is hiring a coach, right? Hiring coaches, multiple coaches, multiple masterminds, right? And at the same time, also knowing when to pull back if you're on too many of those, and then just focus on a couple of them, right? So those are all the things around goal setting. Of course, write your goals down. Of course, visualize your goals. Of course, pray about your goals if you're a person of faith. Of course, share your goals with mentors and friends and family. I mean, these are all the things that you can be doing that's going to help you to attain these goals. And I'd say on top of that, John Maxwell says it well. Be a person who's really about more than a growth mindset versus just a goal mindset, right? Where growth mindset is you're not really have arrived, you're in this journey. The journey is the continual place, whereas a goal mindset sometimes can be like, oh, I arrived. And you can tend to get like, okay, well, now what? You can lose that momentum. But it's the same by Craig Groeschel, that momentum is stronger than all of our resources, leadership, and strategy combined. So as operations people, we're thinking about strategy, we're thinking about resources, we're thinking about leadership, thinking about efficiency. But momentum, according to him, and I believe it too, he says is greater than the sum total of all of our leadership strategy resources combined, right? So how do I create and sustain momentum in my life and my goals? Well, I set a clear vision, right? That is like crystal clear, that's going to pull me in that direction, right? I also, by the way, I seal it by faith. So I'm praying and believing that it's a higher purpose for my life and not just for the here and now. It's eternal impact for the things that I'm doing to attain these goals. Number 3, I sustain it by systems. Okay. I think the opposite will appreciate this. All of that can be great, all that fluffy stuff, right? But systems are going to sustain the goals. Part of that looks like for me is I have coaches, I have apps, and I have tracking, like I'm tracking these things, right? And the last one, it's basically like propelled even further by grit. Because at a certain point, your systems, your momentum, your stuff's going to fall down, and you just got to get up and just persevere and keep pressing forward. And I define grit as one of our family values is obeying God even when it hurts, even when it doesn't make sense, even when I don't have a clear like personal benefit from it, right? And that to me is grit. And if you can do those things centered around goals, man, the sky's the limit. There's no stopping you, and you'll keep that momentum flowing forward.
Brett,
Great.
man. Yeah, good stuff. Thank you so much for sharing with us today, brother. How can people get a hold of you if they're wanting to talk to you, if they're wanting to hear more about what you do, maybe put together a plan for themselves?
Yeah. So if you have Bitcoin, a business, real estate, multiple millions of dollars of gains on your sale, then we want to talk with you. A no cost, no obligation consultation by going to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. Okay. Number 2, if you want to see all of the YouTube, the book, the different, podcasts that we have, Build It to Billions, Capital Gains Tax Solutions, you can go to brettswartz.com. It's brettswartz.com. No Z's, only S's, and 2 T's on the Brett, and it's SWARTS. The last name gets butchered all the time, and Brett is BRETT. So those will be the places that you can check out.
Awesome. Brett, thank you so much, man. Appreciate your time today. Excited about your book, excited about the things you're doing, especially living life on mission. And Ops Experts, thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you guys again next week.
Yes.
Thanks so much,
Bye.
guys.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ops Experts Club podcast. New episodes available every week on Spotify, iTunes, and everywhere you listen to podcasts. If you're curious about how some of the biggest names in entrepreneurship have scaled their businesses to the next level, check out some of our best content on this topic by going to foundationsthatscale.com. You can find the link in our bio and do your part to improve as an ops expert.